I was standing there on the busiest day of the week, the noise of carts, scanners, and impatient customers buzzing around me, while my leg screamed in pain so loud it felt like it was echoing inside my skull. Every step felt dangerous, like the bone might give up without warning. I looked at my shift leader, hoping for understanding, maybe even a little human decency. And instead she looked back at me like I was a problem she didn't want to deal with. That was the exact second I realized something terrifying. This job didn't care if I walked out on 2 legs or not at all. If you've ever been pushed past your physical limit by someone who had power over you, if you've ever been made to feel like your pain was an inconvenience instead of a warning sign, then this story is for you. Like this video, subscribe to the channel and stay with me until the end. Because what I did next wasn't loud or dramatic, but it hurt them in the only place they cared about, their busiest day. This story didn't begin with anger. It began with fear. Months earlier, I was sitting in a sterile doctor's office, staring at an X-ray mounted on a bright white screen. The room smelled like disinfectant, and my heart was pounding harder with every second of silence. When the doctor finally spoke, his tone shifted. He pointed at a dark, ugly shape in my leg and told me I had a tumor in my left tibia, the bone that carried my weight, the bone I trusted every day without thinking. Suddenly, it felt fragile like glass. He explained everything carefully, but one sentence cut through all the medical language and lodged itself in my brain. If I continued working, if I slipped, twisted, or pushed myself too hard, my bone could snap, not fracture, not crack, snap like something that had already given up. I was pulled from work immediately. My routine disappeared overnight. Shifts turned into appointments, paychecks turned into anxiety, pain became my new normal, and fear quietly settled into every corner of my life. By June, I went into surgery. Lying there under those harsh lights, I remember thinking how unfair it felt that my body had betrayed me when all I ever did was show up and work hard. Recovery was slow, painful, humbling. I had to relearn patience with my own body. When I was finally cleared to return to work about 2.5 weeks before everything went wrong, the surgeon made one thing very clear. Even though there were no official restrictions, my leg was still healing. The bone was still vulnerable. If I ignored pain, if I tried to be a hero, things could end very badly. So when I returned, I did everything right. I moved carefully. I listened to my body. I didn't complain. I didn't ask for special treatment. I didn't want to be seen as weak or dramatic. I needed this job. I needed the money, yes. But more than that, I needed to feel normal again. I wanted my life back. I wanted to believe I could still handle things on my own. Then came Sunday. Anyone who has worked retail knows Sundays aren't just busy, they're brutal. Short staff, endless orders, customers already angry before they even walk in. That day, I was scheduled as a curbside shopper and carry-out, which meant constant movement, walking, lifting, loading, rushing, no chance to slow down. About an hour and a half into my shift, I felt it, that deep, wrong kind of pain. The kind that doesn't ask politely, the kind that warns you. Each step felt heavier. The throbbing turned into burning, then sharp pain that shot straight up my leg. I tried to ignore it. I told myself, don't be dramatic, just finish this order. Just make it to your break. But my body didn't care about my pride or my work ethic. My vision blurred, my hands shook. I couldn't walk properly anymore, and panic wrapped around my chest. All I could think was, what if this is how it ends? What if I destroy everything? I fought so hard to recover from so I did what any responsible person would do. I went to my shift leader. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't demand anything. I asked calmly if I could please take my break 20 minutes early because I couldn't walk and needed to rest before I seriously hurt myself. She barely looked at me. Her face showed annoyance, not concern. Then she said it, I'm in pain too. This is a team effort. Unless you have a doctor's note, you can't go on break early. Those words hit harder than the pain in my leg. I felt invisible, disposable, like my body was just another tool to be used until it broke. The cruel part was that I did have a doctor's note. I always had, but she didn't ask. She didn't care. To her, I wasn't a human being recovering from surgery. I was just another worker slowing things down on a busy day. 5 minutes later, after I stood there fighting tears and pain, she suddenly changed her mind and let me go on break anyway, like she was doing me a favor. I sat down, took a deep breath, and felt the pain ease slightly. But something else took its place: clarity, cold, sharp clarity. I realized this wasn't just about that moment. I'd had multiple issues with her before: disrespect, being dismissed, complaints that went nowhere. Nothing was ever done. Sitting there, leg throbbing, heart pounding, I finally understood the truth. If I stayed, this would happen again. And next time, my body might not forgive me. That was the moment I decided I was done. Asterisk. I sat there on my break staring at the floor, listening to the noise of the store bleed through the walls. Carts rattling, scanners beeping, customers complaining, while my leg pulsed with pain in a slow, cruel rhythm. Every beat felt like a reminder that my body had limits, even if my workplace refused to acknowledge them. I pressed my hands into my thighs and focused on breathing, but my mind wouldn't slow down. It replayed her words again and again. I'm in pain too. This is a team effort. As if pain was some competition. As if my freshly operated bone and her everyday stress lived on the same level. The more I sat there, the more memories surfaced. This wasn't the first time she had dismissed me. It wasn't even the fifth. There were moments before my surgery when she rolled her eyes if I asked for help, times she talked over me during huddles, times she acted like any request I made was an attack on her authority. I had reported issues before. I had explained myself calmly, and every single time, nothing happened. No follow-up, no accountability, just silence. Sitting there, I realized something painful. The system wasn't broken. It was working exactly as designed: protect the people in power and ignore the ones quietly hurting. My break timer felt like it was moving faster than my thoughts. 15 minutes wasn't enough. Not for my leg and definitely not for my heart. I stood up slowly, testing my weight, and pain shot through me again like electricity. That was when fear shifted into anger, not explosive anger, cold anger. The kind that sharpens your thoughts instead of clouding them. I knew if I went back out there, nothing would change. I'd limp through the rest of the shift. I'd be in pain all night. And tomorrow, they'd expect me to do it again like nothing happened. I remember walking toward the manager's office feeling strangely calm. My footsteps were uneven, but my decision was steady. The hallway felt longer than usual, and with every step, I felt like I was walking away from months of self-doubt. When I reached the manager, I didn't give a speech. I didn't beg. I didn't explain my entire medical history. I looked him in the eye and said the simplest sentence possible. I'm done. I quit. Saying it out loud felt unreal. Like my body was still shaking, but my voice belonged to someone braver. There was a pause. The kind of pause where you can tell someone didn't expect resistance. He asked if I was serious. I nodded. My hands were trembling, but my voice didn't. In that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control. I turned away before he could say anything else because I knew if I stayed, doubt would creep back in. I walked straight to the time clock, every step painful, every second heavy, and clocked out in the middle of the busiest shift of the week. As soon as I did, the noise of the store felt distant, like I had stepped out of a storm and into quiet. I didn't rush. I didn't look back. I grabbed a cart and started doing my grocery shopping like I had all the time in the world. That alone felt like rebellion. Somewhere behind me, I knew my department was scrambling. Orders stacking up, no replacement, no warning. The schedule collapsing in real time because they had ignored the one person who told them something was wrong. A few minutes later, my name echoed over the intercom, paging me back to my department. I stopped in the aisle and laughed, not loudly, not dramatically, just a small, tired laugh that came from deep in my chest. They still thought they could summon me, still thought I belonged to them. I kept shopping: milk, bread, basic things, normal life things. And with every item I placed in the cart, I felt lighter. Then my main boss walked in. I saw him from the corner of my eye as I checked out. He slowed when he noticed me. Our eyes met for a second. He gave me a side glance, his jaw tight, his expression dark, then turned his head away without saying a word. He looked angry. And for the first time since this all began, that anger wasn't mine. It belonged to him. I paid for my groceries and walked out of that store knowing I had just done something they would feel immediately. It was their busiest day. I was scheduled to open all week. There was no backup plan, no quick fix. After everything I had endured, after every ignored warning and dismissed pain, I had finally chosen myself. That was my revenge. Not yelling, not drama, just leaving when they needed me the most. The moment I stepped outside, the automatic door sliding shut behind me. Something strange happened. The air felt different, lighter, cooler, like I had been holding my breath for months. And only just realized it. My legs still hurt, every step still sent sharp reminders through my body, but the pain no longer felt like punishment. It felt like proof that I had listened to myself when no one else would. I sat in my car for a minute before starting the engine. My hands were still shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. Quitting in the middle of a shift isn't something people plan. It's something that happens when every warning sign has been ignored. For too long, I stared at the steering wheel and felt a wave of emotions crash over me all at once: relief, sadness, anger. And underneath it all, a quiet sense of pride that surprised me. For the first time since my diagnosis, I hadn't chosen the job over my body. As I drove home, my phone buzzed once, then again, notifications lighting up the screen, messages I didn't open, missed calls I didn't answer. Each vibration felt like an echo from a place I had already left behind. They had my number, they had my schedule. They just never had my well-being, and now, suddenly, they wanted my attention. I turned the phone face down and kept driving. I imagined what was happening back there without me, orders piling up faster than they could be filled. Customers tapping their feet, checking their watches, getting louder, more irritated. The curbside area stretched thin. My shift leader realizing too late that the person she dismissed was the one holding everything together. That realization doesn't come with noise, it comes with panic. The quiet kind that settles in your stomach when you know you messed up. I knew that store like the back of my hand. I knew the rhythm of Sundays. I knew exactly how many steps it took to get from the stockroom to curbside, how many orders usually dropped per hour, how fast things unraveled when one person was missing. They weren't just short a worker, they were short the worker who opened all week, who knew the flow, who kept things moving without complaint. And now, there was no warning, no transition, just absence. That night, the guilt tried to creep in. It always does, the voice that says maybe you overreacted, maybe you should have pushed through, maybe this is your fault. I lay there replaying the moment she told me my pain didn't matter. I replayed the way she looked at me, annoyed instead of concerned, and slowly the guilt faded. Because guilt only survives when there's doubt, and I had none left. The next day, I woke up without an alarm, no uniform waiting, no dread sitting heavy in my chest. My leg was sore, swollen even, but I could rest it without feeling like I was falling behind. I checked my phone again, more messages, this time from co-workers, some confused, some supportive. A few quietly admitting they wished they could have done the same. That's when I realized something important. I wasn't the only one hurting there. I was just the one who finally said no. Word travels fast in places like that. By the end of the day, I knew my quitting had become the story, not because I caused drama, but because I broke an unspoken rule. I chose myself. Management hates that. It disrupts the illusion that loyalty is infinite and pain is optional. My shift leader, the same one who told me it was a team effort, suddenly had to deal with the consequences of her leadership. Angry customers, overworked staff, questions from above, all without the person she dismissed so easily. I imagined her explaining what happened. I imagined her trying to justify it, saying I quit suddenly, saying I couldn't handle the pressure, leaving out the part where I couldn't walk, leaving out the doctor's warning, leaving out her words. People like that always rewrite the story to protect themselves, but rewritten stories don't change reality. And reality was loud that day. A few days later, I heard through someone else that management was scrambling to cover shifts, that schedules were being rewritten, that Sundays had become even more chaotic. The busiest days were now understaffed, and the cracks were showing. My absence wasn't dramatic, but it was felt deeply, and that's the kind of revenge that lasts. Not a moment, but a memory. I never went back. I never apologized. I never explained myself again. Because I had already explained myself when it mattered, and they chose not to listen. Walking away wasn't weakness. It was boundaries finally enforced. It was self-respect taking shape in the only language they understood, loss. And somewhere between the pain in my leg finally easing and the noise of that store fading into the background of my life, I realized something powerful. They needed me far more than I ever needed them, and they learned that lesson on their busiest day. Asterisk, the days that followed felt unreal. Like I had stepped into a version of my life where the constant pressure was suddenly gone. No alarms cutting into my sleep. No uniform folded at the edge of my bed reminding me of another painful shift. Just silence, healing, and time to think. My leg was still swollen, still sensitive. But it was improving instead of getting worse. For the first time since surgery, I wasn't actively fighting my own body every day. I was listening to it. That silence gave my thoughts room to breathe. And with it came memories I had pushed down for too long. Every time I had limped instead of asked for help. Every time I swallowed my pain so I wouldn't be labeled difficult. Every time I chose the job over my health. Because I was afraid of being seen as disposable, walking away forced me to confront an uncomfortable truth. I had been loyal to a place that never planned to be loyal to me. As the week went on, the messages slowed, then stopped. Management never reached out directly. No apology, no concern. No acknowledgement of what had happened, and strangely, that silence felt louder than any confrontation could have. It confirmed everything I already knew. If I had stayed and broken my leg permanently, they would have replaced me without hesitation. But because I left on my own terms, because I disrupted their system, they chose avoidance instead of accountability. Through coworkers, I started hearing pieces of what happened after I left. Sundays didn't magically get easier. In fact, they got worse. Orders backed up so badly that customers started canceling. Complaints went up. Staff morale dropped even lower. The shift leader who told me it was a team effort suddenly found herself drowning without the support she took for granted. And the irony of that didn't escape me. She had asked for teamwork when it suited her, but teamwork doesn't survive without respect. One story stuck with me. Apparently, on the Sunday after I quit, someone asked why things were so backed up, and for the first time, my name was mentioned in a meeting, not with praise, not with blame, just absence. The realization that I wasn't there anymore, that I wasn't fixing problems quietly behind the scenes, landed harder than any argument ever could. You don't know someone's value until they're gone. And by then, it's too late. I won't pretend there weren't moments of doubt. Late at night, when the adrenaline wore off, I wondered what would have happened if I had stayed. If I had pushed through the pain like they expected, but then my leg would ache, reminding me of the surgeon's warning, reminding me how close I came to permanent damage. And in those moments, doubt turned into gratitude. Gratitude that I listened, gratitude that I chose myself when no one else would. Healing isn't just physical, it's emotional. It's realizing that your worth isn't tied to how much pain you can endure for someone else's benefit. As my leg grew stronger, so did my boundaries. I stopped apologizing for needing rest. I stopped explaining myself to people who had already decided not to listen. I started imagining a future where work didn't mean suffering in silence. What made this revenge so satisfying wasn't watching them struggle. It was knowing I no longer had to. I didn't need to see my shift leader embarrassed or yelled at. I didn't need a dramatic confrontation. The consequences spoke for themselves. Lost productivity, increased stress, a hole they couldn't easily fill. All because one person decided they were done being treated like a machine. Sometimes revenge isn't about punishment, it's about absence, about removing your effort, your loyalty, your energy, and letting people feel the weight of what they took for granted. That kind of revenge doesn't fade, it lingers, it changes systems. Or at the very least, it exposes them weeks later when I could walk without pain. When my strength slowly returned, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter, I was free from a place that measured my worth by how much I could endure. Free from a leadership structure that confused control with teamwork. Free from the fear that saying no would destroy my life. Looking back, I don't regret leaving in the middle of the busiest day. I regret staying as long as I did. I regret believing that loyalty would be returned just because I gave it freely. But regrets are teachers, not chains, and this one taught me the most important lesson of all. No job is worth your health, no schedule is worth your body, and no authority deserves obedience when it comes at the cost of your well-being. That Sunday didn't just mark the day I quit. It marked the day I chose myself without hesitation, and that choice changed everything. Time passed in a strange, quiet way after that. The kind of quiet that feels uncomfortable at first because you're so used to chaos. My days slowly stopped revolving around pain and pressure and started revolving around healing. I had time for physical therapy, time to rest when my body asked for it. Time to sit with my thoughts instead of drowning them in exhaustion, and in that space, I finally began to understand what had really happened to me, not just at work, but inside myself. For a long time, I had confused endurance with strength. I thought being strong meant showing up no matter how much it hurt, smiling through pain. Proving I could handle anything. That mindset almost cost me my ability to walk without pain. And the scariest part is how normal that felt, how easy it was for an entire system to look at someone who was physically breaking and still ask for more. Walking away forced me to unlearn that lie. Strength isn't how much you can suffer. Strength is knowing when to stop. I thought about my shift leader more than I wanted to admit. Not out of anger, but curiosity. I wondered if she ever replayed that moment in her head, if she ever thought about the words she chose, if she ever realized how close I was to serious injury, or if she just moved on to the next schedule, the next problem, the next person to push. People like that rarely reflect unless consequences force them to. And whether she admitted it or not, those consequences existed now, because the truth is, workplaces don't fall apart because one person leaves. They fall apart because they've built themselves on silence and fear. I wasn't the only one hurting there. I was just the one whose pain became impossible to ignore after I left. Others started speaking up more, taking sick days, refusing extra shifts, asking questions management wasn't prepared to answer. My absence cracked something open, and once cracks form, they spread. There's a special kind of satisfaction in knowing your exit changed the environment you left behind. Not because you wanted revenge, but because you finally stopped enabling your own mistreatment. That's what people don't talk about enough. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is remove yourself from a system that survives on your silence. When you stop absorbing the damage, it has nowhere to go but outward. I didn't get an apology. I didn't get closure in the traditional sense. No dramatic confrontation. No admission of guilt. And at first, that bothered me, but then I realized something important. Closure doesn't come from them understanding, it comes from you understanding. I didn't need them to admit they were wrong. I already knew they were. My body knew it. My fear knew it. My decision knew it. As my leg healed, so did my confidence. I stopped doubting my instincts. I stopped second-guessing my boundaries. I started trusting that discomfort is information, not weakness. And every time I walked without pain, every time I moved freely, I knew I had made the right choice. No paycheck is worth lifelong damage. No job title is worth your health. No authority figure is worth surrendering your safety. Looking back now, that Sunday feels like a turning point, not just in my career, but in my life. The busiest day of their week became the quiet beginning of something better for me, and that contrast still amazes me. They lost control. I gained peace. They lost reliability. I gained self-respect. That's not coincidence. That's balance being restored. People love loud revenge stories, yelling, exposing, public humiliation, but real revenge is quieter. It's choosing yourself. It's leaving when they least expect it. It's letting them feel the absence of what they took for granted. It's watching systems stumble because they relied on your silence instead of your consent. That kind of revenge doesn't fade. It teaches lessons without saying a word. If there's one thing I hope you take from my story, it's this: your body is not replaceable, even if your job treats you like you are. Pain is not something to prove your loyalty through. And walking away is not failure when staying would destroy you. Sometimes quitting isn't giving up. Sometimes it's finally standing up. I left in the middle of my shift on the busiest day of the week. I didn't yell, I didn't argue, I didn't beg, I simply chose myself. And that choice changed everything. If this story hit you, if it reminded you of a time you were pushed too far or ignored when you needed help, take a second to like this video, subscribe for more real, emotionally charged stories like this. And tell me in the comments, what's the moment you realized you deserved better? Your story might be the one someone else needs to hear.